Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Just fine, thank you.
You getting snow your way?
Yeah, it's about stopped though. How about you?
Yeah, it stopped a lot shorter than what we thought we'd get.
Us too. So I'd much rather do this in person, but the weather interferes.
Hi, Regent Kathy.
Hello there.
I
I'm
guess we're seeing you in your new official confirmed state.
well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I wish I was in person, but I understand the weather limitations.
So, what was the vote tally on the floor?
Unanimous.
Ah, that's too easy. Cindy
They
and I
did
had to
make
sweat it out a little bit. That's
they
good
did
though.
make it they did make it pretty smooth for me. I'm very
Good.
thankful.
Well, they should.
Well, we are at the appointed time, and I did a quick scan of all the participants, and it looks like all the regents are on. So that's good with everyone. We'll begin. So let me get myself organized for a second, though. Um, so I begin by welcoming everybody. Weather's such that we're doing this by Zoom, so we get to refresh the skills that we developed 5 years ago. Um, and but I'll remind you all what. Hang on a second. That includes getting text while you're talking. So please, everybody, remember mute your mics when you're not talking, so we don't get feedback for everybody. Um, I'll watch to try to see all of you to call questions, but if need be, use the chat or the raise your hand or whatever else you might think's appropriate, and then tell us who you are just in case everybody knows who's speaking. We will do the agenda um, as was sent out, but we have one item to add, and that is an executive session for a personnel matter that we'll do at the end of the meeting as we finish everything else. So um, we'll come to that at the appropriate time. So again, welcome everyone. I think we'll warm up by addressing the minutes if we could. So we take questions, comments, or a motion about that.
Well, Chairman Ice, this is Regent Rolfe. I move that we approve the minutes from our January 15th meeting.
Thank you for that quick motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Regent Benson. I will offer a second.
All right, thank you very much. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, indicate by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes carry. So what we typically do at this moment is call for introductions, and I wait and do the president's report after that. But I'm going to exercise the chairman's discretion and do an introduction myself at the start. Now, it's an introduction that needs no introduction, but we still should do it. So um, we'd like to introduce our newest regent, Kathy Wolf-Moore, who was confirmed last Thursday unanimously. So that's certainly exciting. We appreciate the work we've already done together, but we certainly look forward to more. So applause emojis, whatever else you want to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
So welcome. I wish we could have done it in person, but we'll celebrate again next time, perhaps. So I would also ask for any further introductions from anybody. All right, I don't see any apparently. Anybody? Okay, so I'll do the chair's report. It'll actually be fairly brief, but I do want to set a little bit of context. So sometimes when one goes through an agenda, you get to the end and you think, oh, why? We talked about a lot of things. How did they fit? Well, and I think today the chairman's report is perfectly covered by the agenda. So we have an update on our strategic plan, for instance, during the discussion part. And if I were to update on the strategic plan, I would say we should be pleased that what we're trying to do is having the impact we were shooting for. We have enrollment up, we have retention up, we have graduation up, we have more students available for jobs, we have debt down, we have businesses growing. So we should feel good about all that. Now, that's not to say the Regents should just feel good about that, because the Regents don't do all the work. All of our institutions do all the work. So thanks to you for all of that. And in this time when we're going through, as we do in this time of year with getting our budget set and things like that, obviously the legislature and the governor are a big part of that too. And so they should be proud of these successes also. So I think that'll show through with the strategic plan. Following right after that, we're getting the remaining updates from last meeting about student success and the efforts around that. So that's certainly part of our strategic plan and something we do all the time, and also demonstrates how the investments that we're making in our students and our institutions are having the kinds of impacts we'd hope for. Fred's doing a legislative update. Obviously, this time of year, what's going on with the legislature and establish our budget is a big part of what we're supposed to be doing. So we'll hear about that as well. So just watch for all those things as the day unfolds, and I think that very much covers the chairman report. So CO Flanders, would you give us the president report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Ice. I want to report that much of our activity and busyness has been over at the Kansas State House, a tremendous amount of legislative activity on several different fronts, and it seems like we're presenting testimony almost on a daily basis at times. But we also know that there's a great amount of activity and at the federal level. Many of the institutions are well aware of that and are actually greatly impacted by some of those federal changes. And so we're keeping an eye on that as well. One thing for our system is we had the Complete College America launch this week. That's an alliance that is a coalition of states who've really committed to increasing graduation and success for their students. And they bring a number of best practices to us, and many of those, the good news is many of those we're already implementing and have already put into place. But it was good to see many of the institutions there and at that launch. And thank you to Washburn University for hosting us during that. So with that, that concludes my report.
Carl, you're muted, buddy.
Thank you. I guess my skills are not quite what they used to be. All right. Thank you, Blake. Any questions for Blake? Okay, that takes us to the Council for Faculty Senate's report.
Regent Ice, I believe there was a question from Regent Winter.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Regent Winter.
Thank you. Blake, just could you give us a little more color on the status of the appropriations process of budgets for higher education?
I can. So right now we're on it's in the House. The news for community colleges and technical colleges, I think, has been very, very good. In fact, they've added some funding that was beyond what the Regent ask was at the time. And so I would imagine that institutions, the two-year colleges are excited about where they are in terms of positioning. The same really for Washburn. It seems like Washburn has received some of their budget asks that came through our system. And then I would say that there has been some headwinds for the state university. At present, they've suspended the facility renewal payments that was part of the bill that was sponsored and shepherded by Senator Billinger last year that increases the contributions towards facilities. We also have not yet received any of the board's budget ask, and we continue to really kind of narrow our focus to the salary portion of our ask and really trying to continue to advocate for our people. But at present, we don't enjoy a really good position in the House.
And Fred will
Thank
probably
you.
talk about that. Fred will probably talk about it a bit as well, right?
Yeah, Fred will expound on that then.
But thanks for the update. All right, anything else for Blake? Okay, all right, we iced the shooter there for a moment, but Council for Faculty Senate, please.
Thank you, Regent Ice. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I hope we're all staying nice and warm. So I was thinking I was going to be in Topeka. I was there yesterday. So I was happy for the ability to be able to sit at the Judiciary Committee meeting yesterday on House Bill 2348. I wanted to extend the thanks of the Council of Faculty Senate Presidents to President Flanders for speaking on behalf of KBOR, along with that to the Chancellor for KU, the President for K-State, representatives from Washburn were there in force, which we appreciated, along with our counterparts in the Student Government Association being there and being able to speak and provide testimony. While we did not speak directly at that meeting, we did submit a position statement on our opposition to House Bill 2348. And so I was happy for the showing that everybody did. And I appreciate all of you as colleagues for being there and standing up in support of higher ed. So thank you. Moving along, currently we are moving through with the policy updates on the Faculty of the Year Award, which is now being grown even more to include a staff portion as well, which we are happy to see our colleagues on the staff side being recognized as well. I believe that policy was read through in governance today for a second reading. So we're making fast progress on that.
Yeah, technically it was a first read.
Oh, first reading. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It was a.
And I was going to actually report on this in governance, but since you brought it up, I'll go ahead if that's okay. It was met with a very positive reaction. We almost moved it without a second read, but then decided it probably wasn't a good idea to deviate from practice. So we'd be sure to get input, but I think you should all be very encouraged by how it's going. And we were told by the Wichita State representative that you all were starting to gather nominations as though that had happened. So I think that's a positive step on your part, and shouldn't cause any delays for any further steps we need to go through for approvals.
Yep, we're trying to be as proactive as we can. I know both ESU and K-State are doing their efforts to try and get things moving on their campuses as well. We have updated the criteria document. We've got a few minor little changes coming up from our meeting today, but we will be submitting that to President Flanders for approval probably here within the next week. We all got a little sidetracked over the last couple of days on things we had to deal with. So that's coming up on there. In addition, I will mention this, but this is still a future item for the board. We have a proposal that is working its way through various committees, looking at options for how to potentially take the tuition assistance benefits provided to employees for their personal professional development and seeing if we can develop a uniform system by which they could be able to actually utilize those across all of our KBOR institutions. That policy is still working its way through our various committees, of which I would like to extend thanks to both Coco and Kobo for their work with us on this, on how we've been able to continue developing it. We are working on the data gathering portion, and as of right now, I can report we sent out a statewide survey to all employee benefits eligible employees across the state, faculty and staff, of which we have over 1,600 responses so far, representing nearly an 8% response rate, which for any of us in academia who try to get a response on a survey, we know that's pretty darn good. So we're working through that. We should be able to present that organized data at the March meeting to both Coco and Kobo, at which time it will also move on to COPS. Likely, we are hoping to be able to have it for the board either sometime in April when you're here in sunny Pittsburgh, because we're hoping it'll be sunny here in April, or possibly during the May meeting as we round out our academic year. Let's see. Other than that, I think that's pretty much everything we've got going on right now.
Well, that sounds like a lot. We appreciate you doing all that. And we'll look forward to that proposal about tuition assistance getting to us.
Yep.
I end up being in sunny Pittsburgh. So thank you. Any questions from anyone? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Look forward to seeing you in person next time.
Thank you very much.
And student government report, please.
Hi, everybody. Happy snow day. At least that's the text that's been going around Pitt State right now. All of the students, celebrating a day off and a way to stay home. I'd like to thank all of the university presidents who are prioritizing student safety today, and all of the people that went into those decisions, making sure that students don't have to get on these roads and that everything is safe everywhere. I think almost all of us are out of session for the moment. I know on our earlier call with SAC, we were all in our pajamas, so that was kind of a change up from our usual attire, but I think we all enjoyed it. A couple of quick updates for you guys. So today was supposed to be Higher Education Day on the Hill. Obviously, we are not in Topeka right now, so we are looking at a couple alternative dates that we will let you guys know about once those are officially scheduled. And then, of course, I want to give a shout out to the Washburn Student Body President, George Burdick. He went to Topeka yesterday to talk about the House bill that is up regarding tenure, and he kind of organized all of us to get a statement out there and make sure that we are also advocating for the people who would be affected for this bill. So I want to give a big shout out to him and to all the student body presidents who organized themselves very quickly to help him out with his what he was going to be presenting. So that's really all I have for today, and I hope everyone is staying warm.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate what you're doing. Any questions? I see a thumbs up. Okay, that takes us to the standing committee reports. Regent/Chair Mendoza, would you do academic affairs, please?
Thank you, Chair Ice. Unlike a lot of people on this call, I did not get a snow day today, so I'm sitting at work in my office, but I'm glad you guys are enjoying. BASC has been busy since the last time we met. At our January 29th meeting, we heard a report on the academic year 2025 performance report rubrics, which we did approve in BASC. We did this morning have to add a clarification to those performance reports and added in to include students that enter into grad school immediately upon graduation, so that they're included in that talent pipeline metric and we don't lose those students in that transition. We also heard at our last meeting from Dr. Carla Wiscombe. It was her last BASC meeting with us, but she shared a summary of the board goals on system-wide transfer associate degrees, and BASC formally approved the baccalaureate degrees, which included programs for elementary education, business administration, management and operations, computer science, pre-bachelor of science and nursing, and pre-social work. This morning, well, actually, our conversations last meeting, we did hear from the HLC on the reduced credit bachelor's degree. We got a little bit more information on that from the HLC. We were going to continue those conversations this morning, but we ran out of time, so we tabled that to our next BASC meeting. This morning, we also heard from Misty Knox. She gave us a report on the Apply Kansas initiative, as well as the Kansas Free Application Days report. Misty will discuss in her presentation to the full board this morning or this afternoon on the Kansas Free Application Days. We did make a decision in Basque to table a formal approval or decision on those days while we give the provost additional time to gather some data that goes along with some questions that came up in the meeting this morning. Lastly, we heard an update from Dr. Monholland on the first 15, and that update is just that the committee continues to work through that initiative and see how we can make that possible. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. So have you all reviewed the admission standards proposal from the University of Kansas?
Actually, yes, we did. I apologize, I missed that. We did hear that, and we did move that to the board for approval as Basque did approve that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very glad to know that. Thank you. Any other questions for Regent Mendoza? Okay, Regent/Chair Benson, please do fiscal affairs.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fiscal Affairs and Audit Committee conducted its agenda call on January 28th and met again this morning on Zoom with the meeting broadcast to YouTube for the public to observe. Troy Brune, who's the Associate Vice President of Financial Reporting from Wichita State, got us started off with a brief overview on the Composite Financial Index, which is a benchmarking tool used in higher education. As the CFI is heavily influenced by the university's endowment or foundation returns, it really should be reviewed over the longer term in the context of how the institution is implementing its strategic plan and making investments on the campus that will bring a return to the university. So thank you, Troy. That was great information. The majority of our meeting this morning, Mr. Chairman, was to hear from Pittsburgh State, the University of Kansas, and Kansas State on their mid-year budget updates. All three campuses expressed how impactful the state investments in the student success playbooks, student financial aid, and in capital renewal have been for improving student recruitment and retention. All three campuses are on track with their fiscal 2025 budget plans and remain competitive among their peer and athletic conference universities for tuition and fees. All three reported strong freshman classes, but also indicated they're seeing softening in international student enrollment, which is something we will certainly keep an eye on. The CFI data that I just referenced for all three universities reflect their work to improve their operating margins. Debt levels for all three campuses were reviewed as well, and none of the universities had debt burdens that were concerning to the committee. Doug Ball, Jeff DeWitt, and Ethan Erickson and their teams are all to be commended for their work to improve the financial standing of their universities. Certainly challenges lie ahead, as we heard this morning, with the need for more state investment in employee pay, the uncertainty of federal grant funding, cybersecurity threats, and the looming NCAA court case that will bring athletic department revenue sharing with students in the coming months with no identified funding stream. And they're all mindful of these important risks and striving to plan for potential scenarios in order to prepare. So we appreciate all three of those presentations. The committee also approved the items on today's board consent agenda under fiscal affairs. And lastly, this morning, Mr. Chairman, Director Bristol reminded the committee that the universities are preparing their plans for the board to review this fall for the multi-year Campus Restoration Act funding. And that concludes my report, and I would stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, anyone?
Thank you, as always, to Vice President Frisbee for summarizing yet another busy meeting for the Fiscal Affairs and Audit Committee.
It does sound like it was a busy meeting. I'm sure you had great fun. I'm sure you had great fun. So any questions, anybody? Okay, thank you. So that takes us to the governance report. I'll do that. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay, good. So we began by discussing a proposal on student health insurance benefits. That will be before the whole board here shortly. You can know and should expect that we gave it appropriate diligence. It is a happy circumstance of a reduction in premium, which is somewhat rare. So we were glad to work through that due diligence, and we did approve it to go to the board for approval today. We also spent some time on the first read on the faculty and what we believe will become staff awards going forward, and I reported on that a few moments ago. But we were well aligned on the first read, and we think we've already gotten a lot of feedback. So we're expecting that'll move forward in a pretty expeditious fashion, but we'll wait for the second read. And then finally, you all know, I believe, that we do periodic reviews from each of our institutions on their safety and security reports. We all know the vital importance of that. We heard from University of Kansas and the Kansas Medical Center today. Those were good comprehensive reports, and they have strong programs in place, and we were appropriately thankful to them, I believe. So any questions about governance? Okay, thank you. So that moves us along to the consent agenda. We would entertain a motion to approve it. You've heard that the committees reviewed the things as appropriate in the consent agenda. Any motion, anybody?
Chair Ice, this is Regent Rolfe. I'd move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Regent Dykes, second.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving, aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. So that takes us to the discussion agenda. We'll begin with academic affairs. We have a proposal from Washburn for a new Master's of Science. I believe Provost Frisch will be presenting that.
Yes.
Good morning.
I'm John Frisch with my screen on. Can you hear me?
Not well. It's
Let me try again. Can you hear me any better now?
much better now.
All right. I'm John Frisch. I'm the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Washburn University. And Washburn University is seeking approval to offer a Master's of Science in Medical Dosimetry. Medical dosimetry is the field that involves calculating radiation doses and other treatments for another patient who needs.
So you're breaking up a bit again.
All right. Try again. Medical dosimetry is the field that involves calculating radiation doses and other treatments for cancer patients and other patients who need such treatment. Our decision to initiate this program is grounded in both regionally and nationally medical dosimetry. Market research indicates that Washburn alums and students from across the nation are interested in this program. We anticipate filling cohorts of about 20 students a year. In 2023, the median salary for medical dosimetrists, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, was $132,300. The degree is at the master's level, as most radiation technologists already have a bachelor's degree in medical dosimetry to follow up for radiation. Your proposal.
Okay, I think I followed except right to that very last thing. You just said that's what you're proposing? Is that right? Okay. All right.
Our curriculum process and also approved by the Washburn Board.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Regent Mendoza, I think you've previously told us that Basket appropriately reviewed this, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So any questions?
I don't have a question. I just make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
This is Alicia Johnston, second.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And we'll look forward to the great program and the graduates from that are the successful graduates. Okay, so that takes us to Vice President Mulholland reporting to us on a request for the change in admissions to the University of Kansas and Regent Mendoza commented on this earlier, but do you have anything else to say, Regent Mendoza?
No, I don't have anything else right now.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Ice. The University of Kansas proposes changes to its qualified admissions for freshman applicants under the age of 21. KU proposes to admit students with a 24 or higher ACT score and a cumulative high school GPA of at least 2.5, or students with a cumulative high school GPA of at least 3.0. KU also proposes reinstating a February 1st deadline for freshman applicants under 21 for the following fall semester. Such applicants would still be required to have at least a 2.0 GPA on any college coursework taken while in high school. Included in the board materials on page 31 is a matrix with the current qualified admissions criteria for all state universities, as well as KU's proposed changes to its qualified admissions. If the changes in admission requirements are approved, there will need to be some regulatory amendments to make those changes, to affect those changes. As noted earlier in the meeting, BASC reviewed and approved the proposal at its earlier February meeting. I believe KU Provost Barbara Bickelmeyer is present to respond to any questions from the board, if there are any. That's all I have for presenting this item, Chair Ice.
All right, thanks for the update. Any questions?
I have a question, just at a clarification. What's the cutoff in the age 21 or younger for a freshman, that this applies to somebody 21 years of age or young? What if I'm 22?
It doesn't apply to them.
Okay.
I think the part of the justification is that is considered 21 and younger is considered the more traditional student. Those students who have been out longer than that, their test scores, their GPA, there may be some other factors that need to be considered before granting them automatic admission. But I'll defer also to Provost Bickelmeyer. She may have an additional perspective on that.
Regent Dicus, that's really one of the aspects that generally delineates a first-time full-time freshman, or someone who's coming generally from high school into college, and the age of those scores when you're thinking about ACT, or if there's other evidence besides their high school transcript to look at. I think one important thing to help frame that also is this is a request to change qualified admissions requirements, and qualified, in other words for qualified admissions requirements, is automatic. So really what we're talking about is changing the metric by which we really actually don't do additional review. So when a student sends in their application for admissions and we look at their, and again, that first combination, the minimum of a 24 in ACT and a minimum 2.5% high school GPA, that's saying if you meet those, then you're immediately given a letter that says you've been admitted to KU. The reason why that's important to us and why we're doing that is, you'll note in the rationale, when we compare ourselves to other public research universities that are in our peer group in other states, such as University of Missouri or Arkansas or Iowa State or others, those institutions with very high research activity, they have a 3.0 minimum. So really what's happening, so we have a small number of students who are kind of getting caught, who are from Kansas, who send their application in, and I'll just use MU because, you know, they're over there. But they send their application into KU and MU immediately sends them a letter back that says you're admitted, and KU doesn't because it's not that qualified or automatic acceptance. So that's what we're changing, is that small group of people who get that automatic letter.
Thank
Chair,
you.
Regent Dicus, Samantha Christie Dangermont from Academic Affairs staff also pointed out to me that under 21 years of age is also a category set forth in state statute, KSA 76-717.
And
Thank
the
you.
reason, Regent Dicus, I brought that up in terms of the qualified aspect is if we did have someone who was 22 or older, and they apply, we would generally just do a more full review based on their ACT scores and their GPAs and see what else they had been doing, to see what other data there was to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Chair Rice?
Yes.
I don't have a question, but I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the conversation we had about this in Basque. So there was some concern about the 3.25 GPA being reduced down to the 3.0. And our Provost Bickelmeyer just kind of talked about why we're doing that so that we catch those students. But we were also had a discussion about high school students. That's 4 years of a lot of brain development happening. And a freshman in high school may not always make the best decisions, or they could have an off year, or, things happen. So reducing that gives them an opportunity to, okay, I kind of had a bad year this year, but overall you did well. And, you're given the opportunity to apply and receive that automatic acceptance. So that was a little bit of the conversation that we had in addition to everything else that's been mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Or we would entertain a motion.
I would move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Regent Benson.
And I would second.
Thank you, Regent Mendoza. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right, thank you. You have your new standards,
Thank you.
subject to the changes, the additional implementing changes that Vice President Mulholland mentioned. Okay. All right, Misty Knox is going to present on the pre-application day, and we heard Regent Mendoza say we're no longer going to entertain a motion. This is an update.
Thanks, Chair Ice. Regents, happy to be before you. While they're queuing up the slides here, just a little bit of information. So the Apply Kansas initiative is a board goal under the family pillar of the Building a Future strategic plan. It's really centered on the continued implementation and expansion of the Apply Kansas efforts. So in today's report, I'll highlight the growth of Apply Kansas, really focusing on its widespread adoption and the growing involvement of both the schools, the high schools involved, but also the students across the state. In 2024, we saw a significant increase in participation, as you'll see today, driven by really a more targeted approach, as I mentioned last year, to really the school registration, and with 89% school districts now involved. So that's been a substantial increase for this year in our report today. Next slide. So Apply Kansas began in 2015 as a part of the American College Application Campaign with the goal of increasing the number of first generation and low income students applying to colleges across our system. It's been designed to provide support for Kansas high schools, their seniors during the application process. And it really celebrates all the post-secondary plans, including college, career, or other pathways. So just for more information, so these events, they're held during the school day for these students, where they are provided with some hands-on assistance from individuals that are educated in the application process in order to help them complete these applications, not just for college, but also jobs and other post-high school pathways. So schools can choose to host these events during those 3 Apply Free days. that we've been piloting, or any other day in the fall, their data must be reported to me by December 1st to be reported out within our collection today. Next slide. The American College Application Campaign is administered through the ACT Center for Equity and Learning. As you see there, all 50 states actually operate their own version of this campaign. The initiatives are really customized to address the state needs and are designated by varying names, as you see there. State coordinators convene monthly to collaborate, exchange best practices, and really exchange resources and align our efforts nationwide. Next slide. This year, 301 schools participated in Apply Kansas, with 259 of those schools reporting data. In terms of school districts, we have 286 school districts in the state. 253 of those school districts are participating in Apply Kansas. So this is resulting in a 89% participation rate, which again has been a substantial increase. Of the schools that participated in Apply Kansas, half of those are considered economically disadvantaged, so about 151. We took a more targeted approach, as I mentioned, in really supporting those schools who were economically disadvantaged but hadn't participated previously within the Apply Kansas efforts. Next slide. So KBOR assumed leadership of Apply Kansas in 2020. And since then, there's been a significant increase in both school participation and the number of schools reporting data to us. This means that the schools are not only registering to be designated as an Apply Kansas school, but they're actually hosting those application events and supporting their students through that step within the process. In 2020, as you can see, 108 of the 151 schools reported data. That's representing a 72% registration rate. By 2024, this number has risen to an 86% reporting rate. So with the jump of the 72% to the 86%, I feel this really highlights the campaign's expanding reach and effectiveness, and really that significance within the school to report us their data. Next slide. So this slide is going to focus on the 3-year trends, highlighting the initiative's expanding reach and really the growing commitment of those schools to both participate and report their data to us. So as you can see, in 2024, we saw a significant 38% increase in the number of schools registered. Compared to the previous year, we saw, the 10% increase there, along with a 33% increase in the number of schools reporting data. So again, these gains are really reflecting the continued success and widespread impact of the initiative. Next slide. This slide is going to show you the number of seniors that are participating in the application event and the total number of applications submitted, and also the average number of applications per student, which has been between 1 and 2. Of the 22,808 applications you see there in 2024, 60% of those applications were submitted to our public institutions. Next slide. So again here, highlighting the 3-year trend, showing year over year, the increase in senior participation as well as the number of college applications, again, demonstrating the initiative's growing impact. So those 259 Apply Kansas schools that reported their data to us, they can now qualify as that all-star high school recognition that I reported back in October. So this is when they're going to continue on and host that FAFSA completion event, as well as host their senior signing day event to really support all their students in their post-secondary plans. And then to build on this momentum, just for a second, I wanted to take a look at the most recently released college going rate. Might be foreshadowing some of what's next within our agenda, but look at, to go ahead, next slide. Looking at the class of 2023, this marked the first increase in the college going rate in the past decade. Those students would have participated in our 2022 Apply Kansas campaign. As a note of significance, this was when we were able to reach an over half of our school districts participating in the Apply Kansas campaign. Actually, 53% of our school districts were participating during the year of the class of 2023 data being reported here before you. We're hopeful, again, that the 2024 Apply Kansas campaign, with that 89% participation of the school districts, that we can continue on with this momentum. Next slide. Additional information is located on the Apply Kansas page. It's kansasregents.gov. Click on the student tab and you can see reports from previous years, as well as additional information about the Apply Kansas efforts across the state. And this is going to conclude the Apply Kansas portion of my report. I can stand for questions now or wait till after the Apply Free Days report.
Let's take some now, because I accidentally narrowed your presentation only to 5 free days, and you covered a much more comprehensive set of things by talking about Apply Kansas. So any questions about Apply Kansas?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Please, Regent Benson.
Misty, first of all, it's a great effort, and I appreciate you and everybody else that's a part of this. As part of the application events, is there also, in addition to helping students file applications, is there anybody on hand to talk about federal financial aid or scholarships or other assistance that's available for students?
Great question. I'm glad you asked, Regent Benson. Much of these Apply Kansas events are coupled with a FAFSA informational session for our students to not only get assistance or even fill out their FSA IDs during that time, but they're really trying to couple that within the same day as well, during the same time frame. So some schools will rotate between, an Apply Kansas college application event and then to the financial aid portion where they're talking about offsetting the cost of attendance.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And then in addition, from there, typically they'll have a FAFSA completion night where parents as well will then be attending that high school event.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we can go to part 2 then.
So I want to first begin this presentation today by really just expressing my gratitude again to our institutions and their contributions in these efforts, and also for Regents in seeing really the importance of increasing the access for our students. And also, Colleen and DRP was able to collect and disaggregate this data for us. Super appreciative for DRP's work in this collection before you today. So the Kansas Apply Free Days initiative aligns with the Building a Future strategic plan and the board goals by supporting our Kansas families, removing the barriers that hinder students from pursuing post-secondary education, and expanding access again to higher ed, particularly for those underserved populations. In today's report, I'll provide you an update with the 2023 and 2024 applications received during the Apply Free Days, and then also the 2023 yield data based on our aggregate collection. This was established as a pilot. It was designed to increase the college going rate and FAFSA completion rates. By reducing those financial barriers, the program encouraged more students to apply to college and pursue post-secondary education, ultimately expanding the number of graduates entering the workforce with competitive skills. So we do have baseline data on the college going rate, as you saw during the Apply Kansas report. Next year, we'll be able to start measuring really the impact of the Apply Free Days with the class of 2024 college going rate. As you know, last year's rollout of the simplified FAFSA negatively impact FAFSA completion rates. Given those challenges, our FAFSA completion data really remains inconclusive at this time to report out. Next slide. So the Apply Free Days was proposed to the board in July 2023 with the first event held over 3 days, November 7th through the 9th, 2023. And the initiative continued in 2024 in the fall. Last fall, it was held October 7th through the 9th, 2024. So during the Apply Free Days, all Kansas institutions waived their undergraduate application fees for those 3 days. I want to specifically note the difference between Apply Kansas and Apply Free Days. Both have the same, ultimate goals, but some high schools align their Apply Kansas application completion events during these 3 days while others do not. That decision is left up to that Apply Kansas, the high school site coordinator, based on what works best for their school and staff's ability to support those events and so forth. Additionally, application fee waivers for financial hardship, they are available year-round for students who meet the eligibility requirements. And that eligibility could be they're receiving a ACT or SAT fee waiver, they're participating in the free reduced lunch program, Gear Up, JAG, TRIO, or other similar programs. And just for additional context, for students who use that fee waiver, someone such as a school counselor, family member, must first be aware of that process and inform them about it. Students then select the fee waiver option on the application and must complete the required form and submit it either by mail or email in some cases to that respective institution. In certain instances, high schools will handle this process. Again, they'll get all the necessary signatures, including the student signature, as well as an official seal before sending it on to our institutions. Next slide. Additional information resources are available on the Apply Free Days website. Again, kansasregents.gov, and then go to the student tab. There are previous reports and additional information on that page. Next slide. So let's first take a look at the national landscape for the free application initiatives. You can see here the states offering free application initiatives. Looking more specifically at states in the Midwest region, you have North Dakota, that's a month, Michigan, also a month, South Dakota, 2 months, Minnesota, a month, Iowa, a week, Indiana is a week. In a couple of our bordering states, Missouri and Nebraska, I know there has been discussions there about free application initiatives. They do, however, offer financial hardship fee waivers. Next slide. So to better understand the data, let's first take a look at our application fees across our public institutions. At this time, there are 4 universities and 2 technical colleges that charge application fees. Next slide. So this slide is going to display the applications submissions for 2023 and then also for 2024, along with the percent change between these years. So you can see here sectors with application fees experienced the largest increase in application submissions during the 2024 free application days. So this really indicates that more students applied to sectors with application fees in 2024 when we compare that to 2023. So from 2023 to 2024, applications received during those Apply Free Days increased by 72% across the system, and then 76% increases for our public institutions. Next slide. So by utilizing the application fees you saw in a couple slides ago, these application fees are what's typically charged at our public institutions. You can see the amount of money saved by our students and families who applied during the free application days in 2023, that being $280,390. And then during 2024, so the amount saved by our students' families was $481,570. Next slide. We'll now transition to the yield data collection for students who applied during the November 7th through the 9th, 2023 Apply Free Days, as well as all students who applied during the terms associated with the 2024 enrollment terms, which that would be spring 24, summer 24, and fall 24. We'll see this in a graphic in a moment on the next slide. But the Apply Free Days data is collected in 2 phases. You have the aggregate collection, which is before you today, and then a unit record collection through KEDS. So in today's aggregate collection, we will capture not only the application activity you saw, but also the aggregate application, admission, and then enrollment data for the 2024 calendar terms that are associated with those 2023 Apply Free Days. So with this collection, we can calculate yield similar to what our institutions are able to do in-house. The unit record collection, this will be the KEDS AY student collection. It's going to include applications from, again, the 2023 dates and their respective enrollments. And this will provide a more precise information tied to the student records. It may be able to give us a better picture of the duplication of applications. However, this data won't be finalized until next October. So October 2025. All right, next slide. So this visual illustrates the terms associated with the aggregate collection. As you can see there, the apply free days was in November 2023. Those students could potentially enroll then in spring 2024, summer 2024, or fall 2024. And that is the data that we have collected and will report out for you in the next few slides. Let's first turn to definitions on the next slide. So for the yield data, the actionable applications, these are going to be complete applications with no missing materials. Admitted are going to be students who have received acceptance into that institution. Enrolled, these are students who enrolled into the respective terms that we collected. Incomplete, these are potentially missing information or materials in order to process their application. And then yield of the number of students who were admitted, how many actually enrolled. So in the following slides, we're first going to examine the yield data for the applications submitted during the 2023 apply free days only. And then we'll see the overall applications received and the yield. And then we'll see the yield without the apply free days applications. We'll also be able to see that yield side by side to be able to really understand the impact. And then we'll break down the applications by population as well. Next slide. Oh. So on this slide, we report the applications submitted only during, only during the Apply Free Days 2023. Along the left are the sectors. Along the top from left to right, you're going to see again that total applications submitted for public institutions, that's the 9,871. The actionable applications, these are those complete applications with no missing materials. For public institutions, that's the 9,294. Then the incomplete applications, so likely missing information or materials to continue processing, that's 577. So 6% of the applications received were incomplete. And then following admitted, 8,733 students who applied to the public institutions received acceptance to that institution. And then 2,593 students who are enrolled in that respective term collected. So for the yield, you'll see there 30% of those admitted students actually enrolled. So again, this is applications during the apply free days. Now in the next slide, we're going to see the applications overall. So this is for all all of 2024 enrollment terms, including those apply free days applications. So the yield for all admitted applications at our public institutions was 49%. For the public institutions specifically, there were 91,707 total applications submitted for the 2024 terms. Of those, 86,314 were actionable. 5,393 or 6% were incomplete. 79,292 students were admitted. And 39,456 students enrolled. So that again brings our yield to the 49% for all applications. All right, next slide is going to show us the yield data excluding the apply free days 2023 applications. So for public institutions specifically, there were 81,836 total applications, 77,020 actionable, 4,816 were incomplete. So the percentage of incomplete applications here is also 6%. For those, this is the same for the students both during and also outside of the apply free days, indicating that the rate of incomplete applications, so those that are missing the required materials, remains consistent regardless of that submission period. For the admitted, there was 71,059 students And then of those admitted, 36,863 students enrolled, bringing the yield then to 52% for the applications submitted outside of the apply free days. And as I mentioned, we're going to look at that yield data side by side in the next slide. So for the apply free days applications at our public institutions, that yield is 30%. And then for the overall applications received is 49%. And then if we exclude those apply free days applications, you're looking at 52% yield. Next slide. Now we're going to look at that data based on the population on the left column. This second column lists the number of applications showing how many students from each population contributed to the total applications. The column further to the right, the very right side, again, is that yield for each population. Just real quick on the first generation at the top there, students may be represented with other populations listed below. Specifically for the first generation population, there were 3,566 applications received. You can compare that then to the number of all applications, all applicants to really understand that number a little further. But for the Hispanic or Latino and Black or African American populations, students are categorized as one or the other for those two areas. And then for the total number of applications, this is going to be the sum or the total of the other, transfer, and first-time entering populations you see there. I just want to real quick on the other applicants, those are students who don't meet the definitions of first-time entering or transfer. So some examples could be the student previously attended that institution and are returning to pursue an additional undergraduate award. Maybe they're required to reapply because of their time that they have been out of the institution. Next slide. So this slide is going to represent the yield percentages by populations, again, displayed side by side here. Among the apply free days applications, you can see there transfer students have the highest yield at 60%, followed by the other applicant category at 48%. And notably, students in the other category yield at a higher rate during the apply free days compared to the same population who applied outside of the apply free days. For the other applicants, they're leading for the overall yield at 64%, followed by the same category for 47%, Black or African American students at 45%, and then first generation at 42%. When we exclude the apply free days, the yield rankings remain consistent with the overall yield. Okay, next slide. So the decision on whether the Kansas Apply Free Day should continue as a pilot program or transition came before BAS today, as Chair Mendoza had mentioned. Really the options before, BAS were to continue with a 3-day pilot, establish the Apply Free Days as an ongoing initiative, decide whether to maintain the 3-day structure or expand, or discontinue the pilot. Either way, there are a multitude of stakeholders that have been a part of this and contributing to these efforts. And we will continue to consult with those stakeholders as we move forward. You can see there on your screen many of the individuals who were involved in those conversations. Our recommendation as we move forward in what our stakeholders are reporting is really to continue around the October dates. And they do wish for the continuation of the programming to support their students. During BASC, really those conversations, and correct me, Regent Mendoza here, but the provost expressed appreciation for the spirit of the application days. Provost Bickelmeyer had noted that the initiative was potentially not cost neutral, and during that discussion, there was suggested that the provost collaborate and explore ways to really streamline their processes for the students that are applying. during these days, and really reducing the burden faced by their admissions department during that free 3-day initiative, and also the potential for reducing the application duplication. But that was a part of those conversations today during BASC. And with that, I'll defer to Regent Mendoza or questions.
Thank you, Misty. I just want to echo what Misty just mentioned about the conversation that we had in BASC this morning. It was a lengthy conversation, and I think overall the consensus is a positive initiative, one that we want to try to do for our students, but we still have some questions about some of the data as far as being cost neutral and that type of thing. So in talking with Misty, it was determined that if we tabled this until our next BASC meeting to have further conversation, it wasn't going to affect her timelines or anything. So the provost were going to meet in the meantime to gather some more data for us so that we can look at this more in a bigger picture.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate you having the discussion and carefully evaluating the data. And I'm sure you thought of a number of additional ways to look at it. So we'll look forward to that. In advance of that, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Regent Vincent. I have a question for Misty. With the yield rate that you've mentioned, first of all, are we happy with the current yield rate? And then a follow-up question is, do we have a goal of a yield rate that we would like to see in the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever the time frame is?
Thanks, Regent Benson. I didn't catch the first part of that, but let me elaborate on the second part of your question here. We do have some baseline data, and that's really what we're gathering here today. With the college going rate, we're also utilizing that as a baseline as well. But in our aggregate collection, we're able to really understand where we started and really articulate, come maybe October, we might have more information regarding if it has been impactful as far as the initiative goes. And what was the first part of your question?
Well, I was just asking if overall, if you were happy with the current yield rate, given that it's so new, and then really where we were going and where we would like to get to in terms of a yield rate.
Yeah, thanks for repeating that. So I believe the data shows students are applying to multiple places, which is really opening up more choice for our students. And really for those students who need it the most, they may be getting multiple aid offers, and really they're able to compare those aid offers and really choose, potentially which institution best maybe meets their needs without having to really pay that application fee, which may deter students from maybe looking at all of their options that would be available.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for all the efforts on this. And I think we'd all echo, we think anything we're doing to expand our funnel and understand better is helpful. So thanks for all that. Okay. I believe that takes us to governance. We're on a roll, so I'd suggest we tackle one more before we take a break. So that we'll just immediately turn to Jeff DeWitt to talk about the health insurance benefits and premiums. And again, you'll recall we did review this at the governance committee.
Thank you, Chair Ice. Every year there's a different member of COBO or a CFO that sits on the Student Insurance Advisory Committee. There are 2 students from every university, including the medical center. And then there's a committee they have on their own where they review the insurance that's provided to students, some of it required, particularly those in medical professions and international students, or students just looking for an option for insurance that they can afford. And you'll find that the United Healthcare Student Resources provides this insurance. There's a pool in total of about 6,000 students across universities participate in that. And during the COVID period, you saw the premiums go up considerably due to the experience of that pool, where premiums had shot up and there was a struggle to deal with the claims versus the premiums that were in there. And last year, the claims had dropped considerably, and we were able to hold the premiums to 0 increase. This year, as we looked at it and getting a better trend on experience post-COVID, it was apparent that there was going to be far more premiums collected than was needed to cover the claims that were there. And there was a extensive discussion by the students and myself in terms of, do we want to take that benefit and increase the coverage, lower the deductibles or increase the type of coverage, or do you want to do this in terms of lowering the premium amount? And through extensive discussions and unanimously, the committees came to, let's take a prudent reduction in premiums of 6% across all premiums, which would provide some unusual and unexpected relief when you're looking at all the things going on. Page 36 of your agenda, you can see the premium decreases and see the document. So what, as the chairman of that committee this year, I'm recommending to the board that, and the committee's recommending to the board, that we accept a lowering of the premiums for 2025 by 6% that will provide relief, and we believe is prudent. And now there could be a possibility experience is different a few years from now and it goes back up, but we're trying to do it where we don't get a whiplash, but we get a prudent reduction of the cost to the students. And then it gets evaluated every year. So if the experience gets better, we can do hopefully another reduction or keep it where it is. But we believe this is a prudent and responsible reduction in the premiums to the benefit of all the students.
And again, the governance committee shared that view. So any questions, anybody? And a motion would be appropriate potentially as well.
Well, this is a slam dunk. So this is Regent Rolfe, and I would move to approve. Good work.
You moved it twice today. So, all right. Is there a second?
Is Regent Benson? I'll offer a second, Chair.
Okay. All right. And Regent Dicus did it by a gesture. So maybe we'll record them both. All right. So, and again, it's a happy circumstance to have premiums going down. So I'm guessing there's no discussion. So all in favor, aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, wonderful. Well, we're accepting this premium reduction for all the participants. All right, so let's go ahead and take a break. I'll say let's take 10 minutes, turn your camera off, and when you're back and ready to go, turn it back on, please. And we'll see you all in a few minutes. And so it looks like we're still looking for a couple Regents. We'll wait a second more or see if this causes the cameras to come on. There's Regent Dicus. You were the last one to speak, so your big picture's been there the whole time. So we can see you large.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'm delayed in this, but do we have, if Misty's still available later on and we have time, I've got a question for her, which may be a 2 to 3 minute answer.
Well,
So
let's just see if we can do it. Let's just see if we can do it right now. If she's still on, which she may not be. I don't see her.
wouldn't blame her. She did a good job in her presentation. Okay,
Yes.
I'll take it up.
So we'll try to get her. We'll try to get her back later. So part of the reason we timed the break where we did was so the enthusiasm could build for the upcoming strategic plan update. So that's why we could have even got a little longer, let it build a little more, but I guess we won't. So, Dr. Flanders.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair Ice. And it does feel like, even though it's virtually, that the enthusiasm is at a fevered pitch. Next slide, please. Every year we talk about the strategic plan and the 3 pillars: serving families, businesses, and prosperity. If you'll remember, we did this plan beginning in 2018, and we went to several Kansas communities to get input from not only parents and students, but also businesses, and they really helped inform the plan. Next slide. So I think a real strength of the plan is not just that we have goals and metrics and the populations we'd like to serve within the plans, but also what board action are we going to take to help move these initiatives forward. And so to improve our affordability, access, and success, the board essentially said, we're going to really advocate for increased need-based financial aid. We're going to keep tuition and fee increases to a minimum. I would say that for state universities, 3 out of 4 years from 2019 to 2022, those tuition rates were held flat, and actually all 4 years at the University of Kansas. And so we want to also thank our institutional leaders for embracing this as well. We benchmarked with the National Institute of Student Success. We developed student success playbooks at the institutions. We also have a general education core now that is enjoyed by our community colleges and universities. And we've also increased the number of system-wide transfer degrees, all which play in increasing not only affordability because someone can complete perhaps sooner, but also increasing the chance of success. Next slide. So if we just look first at affordability, we want to keep those costs as low as possible for Kansas families. Next slide. We take a look at some of our metrics. These are just a handful of metrics. We have a number of metrics, and I know that we've been tasked with narrowing the number of metrics that we have on our dashboard and really making it more of a true dashboard. But I wanted to talk just briefly about need-based aid, the average award per year, and the student loan amount. So next slide. If you look at the total need-based aid for state universities, and this includes all those dollars, including scholarships, tuition waivers, received undergraduate students attending state universities, and also funding from our foundation partners, you can see that we've seen an uptick in need-based aid through 2024. Next slide. And then what we heard from the National Institute of Student Success, and actually reporting from our own university leaders, is that one issue is that students will receive scholarships and aid their first year, and then that is cut off their second, third, and fourth year, and that's where we really see some attrition because people run out of aid. I'm pleased to report that we're essentially holding steady there, and we've been able to maintain, I think, relatively robust levels of need-based aid after the first year. Next slide. You know, you hear in the Wall Street Journal and a number of publications about the incredible high cost of borrowing and student loans. And I would tell you that I don't believe, based on these data, that that's the story for Kansas. We're having average loan, if you look at Pell recipients, a little over 24,000, non-Pell recipients, a little under 23,000 on average. If you look at the median, it's actually lower still. And what we know about people that have the very large loans, at least in Kansas, is many times those are paid off because they're directly linked to an education pathway through a professional school or the med center, and they don't have the same issues paying off those loans. So really, in terms of debt, we're really looking pretty good. Now, what we do need to begin to dig into is the relationship between this and just the declining college going rate. So our new populations in Kansas, our populations we're trying to serve, are they really adverse to borrowing at all? And if that's the case, then we need to think about a different strategy to better increase those numbers. Next slide. So if you just look at our results, our state-funded student financial aid nearly quadrupled. Over time, tuition and fee increases are less than half of CPI growth over the last 5 years, and student loan debt of graduates who are Pell recipients has decreased 6% since 2020. So I really want to thank the institutions as well and the people there who are doing a lot of this good work. But certainly our numbers in this area have improved. Next slide. Along with affordability, we know how important just access is, and looking at a system-wide approach to improve access. Some of our metrics, next slide, are the college going rate that you've already heard some about. And then we look at different groups and look at those enrollment gaps. How are we comparing to serving those groups versus the Kansas population? And then we again have some additional supporting and foundational metrics on the dashboard. So next slide, some of the headwinds that we see, and we've all heard about this, multiple reports about the enrollment cliff. And I think some would say, well, it's really, maybe it's not going to come to Kansas as much, but I don't believe actually that is the case. We're going to peak at about 35,000 high school graduates. We've been between 34,000, 35,000 for a number of years, but we're going to peak in 2025 with about 35,000. And then the next 5 years, it's expected to decline about 15% to fewer than 30,000 graduates. But I think, and then nationally, we don't expect that to, if you look at the national number, at no point during the next century does the Census Bureau project high school graduation rate will again exceed 4 million. So they saw a peak nationally at 4.3 million, and there's going to be a decrease to 3.8 million, but that is going to be with us because of these birth rates, unless something drastically changes for a long period of time. So I would say it's not only the total numbers that are changing, but also there's a demographic shift, and it's really moving towards populations that maybe we haven't served as well. So as an example, our 10-year change, Hispanic numbers are up about 2,600 in our high schools, with the whites being down just below 2,000 students. So you'll see those changes, and that's why we need to prepare to serve maybe a different type of student, and then also a fewer number. Next slide. So you heard from Misty that we've actually had a slight uptick in Kansas college going rates, which is really good news. We hope we've seen the bottom of that, but you can see the long-term trend dropping about 11% over 10 years is certainly not positive, and this is something that, coupled with an enrollment cliff, is really troubling and really needs to be addressed. Next slide. If we look at the enrollment gaps, you can see that the enrollment in the darker color is directly on top of the Kansas population. So for white students, our system reflects a higher percentage than actually the Kansas population. We're doing better with Black students. That's narrowed from 1.8 to 0.8%, so a 1% improvement there. But our Hispanic numbers are about 19%. We're serving 16.8%. And so that's an area that has the fastest growing enrollments, and that's one we'll need to really pay attention to. Next slide. The enrollment gaps are more troubling for our rural populations. We've seen those be relatively significant. You know, this has always been somewhat confusing to me because we do have several colleges located in rural areas. One thing some of the community colleges report is that there's quite a bit of competition as labor shortages have really come into play, that people can get a pretty good job right out of high school. And so there's some competition there with actually going to college. But that'll be an area we will need to continue to focus on. Next slide. And one that the board has been paid quite a bit of attention to is our Pell recipients. Now, we do show that we're serving more Pell recipients in terms of enrollment than the Kansas population. We're actually working to understand why eligibility dropped so sharply from 23 to 24. And we think perhaps it's in the way we're doing the calculation and that some things have changed relative to Pell. So I just leave that as we dig into that, we might need more information. So we might not be overperforming there as this suggests, but we are doing better, I believe, with Pell recipients. And part of that was because of the partnership we have between the legislature and the governor as they've increased need-based aid for those students. Next slide. So some other bright spots in terms of access is that the number of Pell eligible students in the system grew 4.9% last year. That's good news because that reflects a higher percentage, I think, of first generation students or students whose parents didn't go to college. And the system is providing college courses to more high school students compared to 2020. If you look inside the numbers to the high school students, and I think why the board has been focused on looking at how we might implement the first 15. Only 11% of those high school students enrolled in system-wide transfer courses attended a high school with a high concentration of students receiving free and reduced lunch. So that might indicate that we're serving maybe a high number of students who may have attended college anyway. And if we want to use that as a tool to increase access, I think the board's rightly looking into areas, although it may be difficult, looking into areas where we can expand that population and using tools such as the first 15. Next slide. So then we know that access is important, but without success, it's certainly not the promise that it intended to be. And here we focus on helping students graduate and succeed in their careers. Next slide. We look at persistence rates, graduates in jobs with sustaining wages. We have several other metrics if you want to go out and look at those. And as you look at our persistence and success rates, next slide, you can see that we've really hovered around just over 66%. I would say that just on observation, I think that's doing relatively well. We know that we can do better, but we just seem to be stuck right in kind of in that area. And so we're hopeful that as we continue to improve graduation and the ability to move within the system, that these rates will continue to be strong. Next slide. Here's an area where I believe we're doing really well as our number of our graduates who are in jobs with sustaining wages. And what we have defined as a sustaining wage is graduates who are making at least 250% above the federal poverty level 5 years after graduation. So you have to be earning in the upper 30s to fall into that category. We know with inflation that's going to continue to be more robust, but that's where we are in terms of now. And you can see if you get a certificate at a community college, 71% are employed above sustaining wages. A technical college associate degree, almost 81%, and then a bachelor's degree, about 85%. And so those students are doing well that complete certificates and degrees at our institution in terms of the way they're able to participate in the economy. So the short version of student success, next slide, is that we have increased on-time graduation rates by 7 percentage points during the last 5 years. Retention rates have increased 3.7 percentage points, and the starting wages for graduates of our Kansas colleges and universities are up 22% since 2020. I think this is really a good news story and really plays into the fact that for Pillar 1, the plan is working, and we just need to continue to execute the plan with everything that the board, the universities, and the colleges have put into place. So next slide. Now we move into Pillar 2, which is supporting Kansas business. Next slide, focusing on how to help build a skilled workforce for business and employers. We really look at a couple of talent pipeline metrics. Next slide. The engineering initiative and also the Excel and CTE initiative, which is delivering the technical education to high school students. Next slide. If we look at engineering, we began back in 2012, and the legislature and governor invested in facilities in 3 of our universities with engineering programs to really expand those facilities and increase the number from 875 to at least 1,365. That was the goal over 10 years. You can see we surpassed that. Now we've come down slightly with some of the enrollment flattening that we've had and a few dips in those programs, but we're still at 1,440 graduates with the goal being of 1,365. And so, we've talked about how do we get more engineers living and working in Kansas. We know that those wages outside our state have been very robust. So part of that is just communicating to Kansas employers how competitive it is for these graduates, and then also connecting our graduates to Kansas employers early in their process. And we've seen evidence of that as we've went on campus visits with our universities. Next slide. In terms of the Excel and CTE, again, we were flat from 3,500 to 3,800 years before 2012. Those numbers almost never moved, and that was the number of high school students that we were serving in our community and technical colleges by delivering technical education to those students. You can see the Excel and CTE has really increased those numbers this year, a little over 16,000. Now, one thing that has flattened and is slightly down is the number of the students that are actually completing a program. And so our next steps there are to engage the Technical Education Authority, and hopefully they'll engage some of the institutional leaders and really maybe set up a small task force where they look at how can we improve completions with the program and really move it from just access to more of completing that certificate. Because if the certificate is maybe 3 courses in length, we want students to be able to complete that so they can enjoy the benefits of what we saw earlier in those slides of a robust job as they graduate from our system or continue their education. Next slide. The next area we look at in terms of serving business is the research enterprise. And I don't know if part of this might belong in Pillar 3, so we're discussing the plan and where parts of this might actually fit better. Next slide. We know that research supports groundbreaking discoveries. It brings funding to our communities, and it really gives Kansas a competitive edge. Companies like to come where there's innovation. That attracts many companies, and we know that's important for Kansas. Next slide. If we look at the total R&D funding from 2018 to 2023, you can see the increases that we've had. We also look at that in terms of industry-sponsored research and the growth that we've had there. And you can see that we've grown from 638 total R&D dollars to over 1 billion. And so that's been exciting for our state and really something that we probably don't talk about enough, but really has been great for our Kansas companies and also the population in Kansas, particularly in the areas of health. Next slide. So more talent is staying in Kansas. Research is growing.
So Blake,
yes.
Over how much? The research? Over $1 billion?
Total.
Wow, $1 billion. I'm just trying to help you talk about it more.
Yeah, it's not millions, but billions.
Billions of dollars.
So it is now. I want to just say right now, there's all kinds of federal changes here. And, I think leaders are going to talk about some of the headwinds in upcoming meetings about, what's happening on the federal landscape. But right now, the news as we look back in the previous years has been really good. And particularly in the area of industry-sponsored research. So that's been exciting. And so total research funding has grown by 65%, industry-sponsored research 200%. Much of that is, Wichita has done a great job there linking with the aviation industry. And so you can see that higher education is a real juggernaut and has really provided a great amount of tailwind to the Kansas economy. Next slide. As we look at advancing prosperity, what we're talking about here is to really think about moving this beyond economic prosperity and look at other areas where we can advance the citizenry in our state and our communities. Next slide. We do look at an economic development role. Are we attracting companies? How's the research enterprise doing that? We've now put a little more of system thinking into this pillar because I would tell you that it has been underdeveloped. We've got a group working on making sure our metrics and the way we collect data is the same across institutions. And I think this is going to be really good for our system. Next slide. We also include the blueprint for literacy in this because it does increase prosperity in those Kansas communities, even if a person doesn't attend a university. We certainly we know that if reading levels are low in a community, there's all kinds of problems associated with that. And so we want to be sure that we're doing our part to make sure that teachers have the tools that they can really be successful with today's students. Next slide. So I would have some recommendations at the end of this and would entertain any questions or thoughts from the board. Again, we'd like to expand Pillar 3 and broaden the focus from economic prosperity to prosperity. There's several things we can look at in terms of participation, in the voting process, citizenship, all kinds of things around being a good citizen. I'm still hopeful of support and legislative support for the student playbooks. I think that's been very successful and something that we really need to continue. We've seen it pay off in terms of graduation rates. And then, as you know, it's been stormy working through the first 15. There's a lot of questions, rightfully so. We have a group that's going to be making recommendations to me on how we maybe begin that initiative. But I do think we have to have aggressive outreach as we look at the college going rate, even though it looks to be maybe flattening a little bit, maybe slight improvements. We know what we have coming. We have an enrollment cliff coming. We have a changing population that's coming, and we really need to remain aggressive. I didn't mention too much. This was more about serving Kansas. And I didn't mention about strategies too on out-of-state recruitment for our institutions but that can really assist with our talent pipeline as well. And I think institutions realize that it's not just an either or strategy, but a both and. We're going to have to be more aggressive particularly in those states that have oversubscribed institutions. We need to bring that student population into Kansas, and then we need to work hard to retain them here to grow our economy. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
Great update, Blake. And I think a lot of additional information of what you've been sending us with, the success handout. And there's lots to take encouragement from, and lots of accomplishments.
So many times the payoff in our higher ed system comes far later than the initiatives that we implement. And so this is one time we were so excited to see those returns come relatively early from when this board and the institutions really started. And I was really encouraged, I would just tell you, from our group of student service leaders that we had, that discussion we had last meeting, and all the things they're doing to serve and retain students. You can tell that this activity is happening on the campuses. And we've seen a real change, certainly in the last decade, of how we're serving students here in Kansas.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Blake, great information. I would encourage us, and I don't have a solution on how best to do this, but as we expand Pillar 3, I would encourage us to look at ways that we can socialize the link between research and economic development, because I think everybody knows that R&D is extremely important, but really making it easy for everybody to understand that correlation, I think would help us with the population in general, with the legislature, when we go make those requests for research dollars, if it's easy for people to grasp the correlation between the two.
So Regent Benson, and I would just also mention, at least I believe from what I hear from institutional leaders, those are also the hardest faculty to recruit and retain, because there's so many states who are pursuing them right now with really tremendous resource. And at least with the industry sponsored research, we see a very direct correlation to keeping that industry here in Kansas.
Regent Winter, it looked like you had your hand up.
Thank you. Blake, this isn't intended to put anybody on the spot, but I'm just curious. Quick reaction, what letter grade would you give us for our work the last year in advancing our strategic plan?
Well, it does put me on the spot, but I would say in terms of advancement and what the plan's done, I really believe we're in the A range because the returns have been very significant. When you look at, as I talk to some of the individuals who work with student success across a number of states, and one of our partners and some software we've been using is through EAB. They were really excited to see these returns. And then just the sharing that we've had across institutions. And I think you saw that in that group of student service leaders. They're talking across the institutions and finding out best practices. So, I think the strategic plan provides a great framework for all of our activity. And now that these returns have come in so positive, I just really believe we're on the right track.
Yeah, by the way, I wouldn't disagree with you at all. I think the area that I'd like to see us get better in is communicating to the outside world that is beyond our institutions how well we're doing and what it means. I think we have great opportunity there to improve and to really let people know we are a pathway to a better life. And by the way, I like the idea of it dropping the word economic, so it's a broader appeal. So I'm excited about the opportunities that we do have to improve our communication outside of our little world.
I'd agree with you.
All right, thanks, Went. Others? Okay, again, thank you, Blake. I think you lived up to the enthusiasm that had grown there. So, as we talked as the meeting started, context-wise, we talked about the strategic plan. Then the next two segments really fit with that beautifully. It's the carryover for student success for 3 of our institutions from the investments, and then an update from Vice President Frisbee about how the comprehensive grants used, which fits with need-based aid. So I believe that takes us to the updates on student success, and by my notes, it looks like Dr. Lane is first.
Good afternoon, Regents. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to share an update on K-State Student Success Playbook and our progress towards supporting the board's building of future strategic goals that President Flanders just was talking about. I want to apologize in advance. My coworkers Gus and Junebug have been a little noisy today, and so hopefully they'll be quiet as we present this information to you. I'm going to talk to HR about them. Next slide, please. So at K-State, our next-gen K-State strategic plan is the driving force for change in student success outcomes. Specifically, our goals focus on improving first-year retention, our 4-year graduation rate, and our 6-year graduation rates, while also ensuring access and support for all of our students. And we recognize that our metrics are ambitious, but I think they're critical. And the Student Success Playbook framework, I think, has provided the necessary structure to achieve those. You can see for our 2030 targets, we're hoping to achieve a 92% retention rate. We're currently at 85.5%, a 55% 4-year graduation rate by 2030. We're at 53.9, so edging really closely to that goal. In addition, our 6-year graduation rate, we'd like to see at 75%, and we are currently at 71.2%. And then you can also see below the degree attainment gaps that we're also setting our goals for, Pell eligible retention, our success rates for our Black, African American students, Hispanic, and Latino students. Next slide, please. So we're tracking term by term how our students are persisting. And by tracking that term by term data, we can identify at-risk students early, provide tailored support to ensure they stay on course. So you can see on this slide that currently for our fall 2024 cohort of 3,493 first-time freshmen, we are seeing a 0.6% increase in persistence from this time last year. And so as we look at also at reducing degree attainment gaps, we're tracking underrepresented student persistence data. This spring, we're currently seeing an increase of about 1.2% in persistence for our Black first-time freshmen and an increase of almost 1% in our Pell eligible first-time freshmen. We're also digging this spring into why we're currently seeing a 1% decrease for our Hispanic Latino students. We want to make sure that we don't lose ground with that population. Next slide, please. So our strategy for NIST dollar investments is focused on 3 pillars: aligning our enrollment management strategies and student success playbook efforts, leveraging key resources to support student success outcomes, such as our pre-professional and exploratory advising center, which was a playbook initiative, and transitioning to a professional advising model throughout all of our academic colleges to ensure that all students are consistently supported throughout their K-State academic journey. Next slide, please. So over the fiscal years 24 and 25, we've committed $4 million of the NIST funds to initiatives aimed at improving student success outcomes. And these investments include renovating cosmetically Holtz Hall to relocate the pre-professional and exploratory advising center that we've stood up to a more central and highly visible location, transitioning the College of Agriculture and Engineering to professional advising starting in fall of 2025. I want to note that the College of Arts and Sciences has engaged now in professional advising this academic year, and so that's been exciting to see. Continuing our
so thank you. That's a positive development since our November meeting.
We are extremely pleased with the response that our academic college partners have come with, and I think that we're excited to see that play out for our students. Maintaining the EAB Navigate platform to support data-driven advising and outreach, expanding our MAPS and Compass summer bridge programs to have students from colleges outside business, engineering, and agriculture to architecture, planning and design, education, health and human sciences, and piloting a peer mentoring program under the Division of Academic Success and Student Affairs to reach more students who may not be participating in your traditional peer mentoring programs that exist at K-State. And I'm excited to share that this spring we've implemented our EdSites texting initiative that allows us to connect with first-year students in real time, gathering insights on their academic and their personal well-being, and then informing targeted outreach to students who might be in need of some additional support. Next slide, please. So completion grants also continue to be a critical tool for helping students finish their degrees. In the 23-24 academic year, these completion grants supported 91.7% of recipients in graduating within the award year. The current year, we've awarded 69 grants for a total of $205,000. And we have an additional $45,000 available for grants this spring semester. You'll recall these grants are intended to get those students who are really close to graduating across the finish line. And so I think we're seeing some great results from that program. Next slide, please. In regards to need-based aid, which President Flanders was just referring to, we utilize much appreciated need-based aid funding to make available not only from the state of Kansas, to advance its mission of providing access to undergraduate Kansas residents. And so in addition to funds made available under the Kansas Comprehensive Grant Program, the institution also received an allocation of a little over $4.4 million for need-based aid for FY25 from the state. And these need-based funds have been awarded for the following 3 purposes during this current academic year. Our land grant promise focuses on low-income students, our freshman Wildcat grant program for low-income first-time freshmen, and our supplemental promise award focused on emergency aid for currently enrolled students. And this funding is having a positive impact on student success, with the land grant promise resulting in a 12.3% increase in enrollment of our Pell eligible students for this last academic year, and the freshman Wildcat grant students being retained 2% higher than other Pell eligible students and 4% higher than other first generation students. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, these investments reflect a holistic approach to student success, addressing the academic, the social, and the financial barriers that can impede a student's progress. And so as we look ahead, our priorities will remain clear: strengthening professional advising, scaling our data-driven retention efforts, and closing gaps in student success outcomes. These initiatives are not just about improving metrics. They reflect our commitment to providing every student at K-State with the opportunity to succeed. So I want to thank you personally for your continued support of these efforts and look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. Questions, anyone? Okay, thank you, Dr. Lang.
Thank you.
That takes us to Pittsburgh State. I believe Dr. Bond is doing that.
Yes, hi. Welcome everybody to a happy snowy afternoon. I'm delighted to share the progress update on our NIST Pathway to Prominence, which is aligned with our strategic goal. Go ahead, next page, please. So this is just a recap of our prioritized actions following the feedback and the survey that was conducted by the NIST organization. And as you see, there are 4 prioritized actions, which I will discuss in the next several slides. We've made great progress on the first 3 of those actions, and we're in process on the last action. Next slide. So our first item here is the strengthening our financial aid. And this one was a pretty easy task to undertake thanks to a new professional that was hired at Pitt State University a couple of years ago, and that was Vice President for Enrollment and Student Affairs, Carl Stumo, who came in and really had the vision to launch the Great Gorilla Scholarship Program in fall 2024. This is especially remarkable because this is a program that takes the burden off the students and the student being forced to seek out financial funds to support their degree. And instead, it's an automatic offer. Next page, please. So as this chart shows, the student is automatically awarded whichever is the higher source of funds to support their academic pursuits based on their GPA or their ACT. So that award chart there is an automatic conferral as long as the student, 1, continues to make progress, satisfactory academic progress, and as long as they have the GPAs listed to the left there. So this has been a fundamental impact, we believe, on our student success. And we're seeing our rates of retention from year to year, from fall to spring semesters, continue to improve and to be increased with this program. Next page, please. So our second prioritized action was the academic advising structure. We're especially happy to report that we have achieved this pretty much a complete overhaul of how we were doing academic advising. And so now the program has 16 professional advisors, and they coordinate across all 6 of our academic units to ensure that all of our students have access to a professional advisor. That has made a dramatic impact on our students' ability to successfully enroll in the right courses and to make that progress needed for them to pursue their degrees. This Student Success Center was stood up around the same time, and the Student Success Center has enabled our students to access not just the professional advisors, but a series of peer advisors, career development specialists, first-year program personnel, and access to the degree maps, which were all collaboratively created to ensure our students could have a good map of where they're starting with their degree and what it looks like to achieve completion of that degree.
And are all degree programs covered?
Yes, sir. All degrees. The only ones that have been slow to get on board are our transfer students. And that's many times because they come from a 2+2 agreement, and they're very nuanced approaches and parameters to consider before advising the student into their subsequent journey at Pitt State when they're transferring in. But otherwise, all of our degree programs are now on board with this centralized academic advising unit.
Thank you for doing that.
Yep, absolutely. We're delighted. We're delighted by it. Now, I will say it's not without some hiccups along the way, because sometimes that comes with certain changes that have to be made, and we're continuing to explore how to make sure we make those in a way that's thoughtful and respectful of our faculty, the advising role that they've long held, and that expectation as part of their role. And we're transitioning into a mentoring role, and we're finding that to be just an added benefit to our students, that they now have both professional academic advising and the mentorship of the faculty, who are the experts really in their fields, and kind of pouring the support into our students. Next slide, please. This is just a happy picture the day that we announced the Howard W. Smith Student Success Center, and we were all ribbon cutting. And what's kind of remarkable about this is we have created a one-stop shop, if you will, for the students. They come to the library for their studying, for their peer supports, for their academic advising meetings. They can get their career services here. We have job fairs held all in the library. So it's just a really, truly a student success centered location for the students to get all they need. Next slide, please. This is just a quick overview of the number of advisors, the 16, and kind of an average load, if you look at that, is around 155 advisors per professional advisor, advisees per professional advisor. And this is kind of remarkable because the national average is close to 300. So we're pretty proud of the system that we've been able to set up, that we've been able to recruit these advisors and have a system that ensures all of our students have time that they need with an academic advisor. Next slide, please. Another action item that was connected to our prioritized action item number 2 is the Navigate 360. And this launched a year ago in August of 2023. This is an important aspect for students who might come from backgrounds of high economic need, or a family of first gens, for example, so they don't have all the skills they need to navigate higher education. This enables us to have an alert system that might reach out to those students who are in need. And when we say in need, we might mean the student who's discontinued attending class, who stopped submitting assignments, who's indicated any behavioral concerns or other just overall well-being concerns, such as food insecurity or others. So this early alert enables a faculty member who's directly interacting with those students in their classes to alert the system, and then one of the academic advisors can reach out to that student in need. And those numbers there just show you how frequently this system is being used and how impactful it can potentially be for a student who otherwise might fall through the cracks. Our graduate students also benefit from this program, so faculty can also report if a student in their class who is a graduate student also appears to have need and possible intervention. And then finally, we've been tracking all of our appointments. So you can see that since December of 2024, that pretty decent number of 3,769 students, users, does indicate that our students feel confident in accessing the academic advising system, and they're reaching out and they're setting up appointments. So that's some good news there. Next page, please. Our next prioritized action was this development of intentional ways for students to learn about, select, and transition between majors. As we all know, many students start with one major in mind, and then along the way, they discover that that is not a good fit for them. So we have, with the career path development, the career pathways, and our academic advisors working collaboratively with our faculty, we've developed ways to make sure that students know what are other pathways for them to embark on if their current degree is no longer going to be one that fulfills their interests or needs. So that's an area that we're going to continue to work on. We've thought about ways of creating multiple pathways when students already have a certain number of courses underway that would enable them to not have to take an excessive number of courses and to be able to achieve some completion of a degree even when they change majors. That's been, as anybody has been a parent of their kid, when they change majors, that's your big fear. How many more semesters is that change in a major going to add? Well, by having these clear pathways for each major, advisors are able to look across the different majors and help a student really select the major that might best capitalize on the courses they've already taken and set them up for successful completion. And I just think about the story of my own son, who I think might, when he changed his degree, might have wanted to just give up because he was afraid, oh, Mom, this isn't right. You might have to pay for another semester. And we were able to figure out, working with his new advisor, how to get him out in a relatively harmless way by transitioning to a different degree pathway. So that's an exciting opportunity here. Next slide, please. Another prioritized action that we've introduced, because we know how impactful our innovative classrooms can be when innovative practices are incorporated into those classes. So we started a grant program. In this grant program, we have 10 faculty currently who received up to $2,200, and their responsibility is simply to introduce these high impact teaching practices, which evidence shows support student retention, support student success and perseverance. And they also will receive additional funds for introducing OER resources. And we also know with OER resources, that keeps the cost down for students. And that can sometimes be another factor that negatively impacts students' persistence and completion to their degree. Finally, we believe that by creating these kinds of communities and modeling these best practices, we're more likely to spread sort of a positive momentum across campus of what it looks like to really support some of our higher need learners in their classrooms. And we also identified the Gen Ed courses as the most biggest bang for our buck early on, because that's what our students are taking early on in their career. And we hope that that would sort of set them up for success early on. Next slide, please. Our fourth prioritized action is the use of our actionable data to support improved student outcomes. And this is, as it suggests, it's some of the key things that you should do whenever you've collected data. You need to track the data. You need to collaborate with all the right individuals to ensure that you're making sense of the data and then using it to make positive impacts. You need to communicate with all of the key partners. What does that data mean? Try to make sense of it. And then you need to build peer communities to work on that data and take the next steps and understand what are future opportunities to impact our students' success. Career development might be another area that we're continuing to make sure that the data lines up for us to be able to best advise our students with respect to their career development goals. And then finally, proactive interventions. When you have data, you're able to step in before it's too late. In other words, as the Navigate 360 sets us up, before a student goes too far that path of feeling that they can't find success, we're intervening, we're reaching out, we're connecting with them. So we're using that data that we are able to gather through multiple points of contact to support some student success and positively impact our students. Next slide, please. This is a good example of specifically how we've used data, the DFW rates. So by tracking DFW rates, we were able to identify that there are 3 specific courses where students seem to struggle. And we were able to dig down a little deeper in talking to faculty and to the students and determining what their subjects were and their majors. We discovered that some students didn't need to be in this biology class, and instead they could be in an environmental life science, and that would still map to their degree pathway, enable them to be successful. So we made slight adjustments such as that, and the faculty in these 3 classes, now that they're aware of the extent of the DFW rate across this one topic area, are collaborating and brainstorming to identify other solutions to the challenge. Next slide, please. This is my next to last slide. This is another really proud point for Pittsburgh State University, and many thanks to our president, Dan Shipp, who had the vision to pursue the opportunity for all KBOR regions to provide the Associate of Arts degree to our students. We know from research that this increases degree completion, and it also provides kind of immediate financial benefits to our students who earn that associate's degree on their way to achieving their bachelor's degree. Next slide, please. And then here's just a summary of some of the things that we have ongoing and that we're eager in terms of future programming that we believe will continue to help us achieve our goals on the pathway and to achieve the promise that we've made, which that is to make lives better through education. So we have a retention review group who's really looking at those cases, those individual cases of students who are non-retained, and try to understand the different factors that perhaps we should have noticed and been actively pursuing before the student was a non-retained student. We're creating a syllabus template, and that's something that the faculty are taking ownership on, because they realize that students really need that roadmap in each individual course to see how they can be successful and what it takes to succeed in the courses. Our next one is a summer bridge program. That's going to be a heavier lift. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. That takes some money. And so we're having to dig into our financial situation and try to figure out how to establish that summer bridge program. And then finally, a cross-functional data. And that is just going to be a council made up of folks across campus who can come together and really use the data to make very targeted and informed decisions about our students' needs and their future success. Thanks so much for this opportunity to share and highlight all the great things happening at Pitt State University.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. Any questions? Okay.
Mr. Chair, just very quickly, Provost Bond, great information. You're clearly making a huge impact in your first year. So well done. On the early alerts, you mentioned that those are triggered by faculty. Is there any thought to enabling fellow students to trigger that early alert if a student shares with another student that they're in distress?
Now I'm going to write that as a note. I suspect that could be incorporated into that, because staff are also able to provide early alerts through that system. So I will bring that to the powers that be that oversee that. Thank you so much for that great advice.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again for all you're doing. So let's turn to Dr. Roberts, University of Kansas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much. Next slide. I am going to just kick off with our recommendations, and I'll go through each one of these and update you on our progress. But I just want to note that over the last several years in undertaking these initiatives, we really have seen a change overall at the institution in the way that we approach our student interactions. I think they're much more proactive and relational. And I think what you're going to see as I give updates is an increasing ability to personalize our support, as well as a focus on interventions and activities that are really sustaining and maintaining momentum to degree completion. And I'll just let you know, me and my team were able to attend the Complete College America launch yesterday, and we heard a lot of those same trends. It was really heartening to know that we're on that path. We're going to be able to stay on that path. And we really appreciate Rusty getting us into that alliance. We had a really great day collaborating with our colleagues across the system, and I hope we get more opportunity to do that. Next slide. So to pick up on that idea of momentum, this is KU's student success model. This is a lost momentum framework. So we really are looking at student support in 5 different areas of momentum, and where you see those gray circles are places where students often lose momentum. And so what I've done is map our recommendations, as well as many of the initiatives we have going on aligned with our strategic plan, to those different areas of our student success model, really to give you an idea of how we are trying to track our students through that entire degree plan and at KU. Next slide. So our first recommendation is around financial wellness. We have 3 pillars to this. The first is really changing the way we package our scholarships and provide them. And this is through a centralized scholarship tool that we call UCash. And this is a place where we can have common deadlines. And importantly, what we're able to do is take all of the scholarships a student is given or eligible for, from the department to the school to the university, package those together at one time. So the student has all of that financial information available to them when they start decision making. Once they matriculate at KU, then that service is a hub for students to come in and get information that is curated just for them about eligible scholarships. We also launched a financial wellness effort through our financial aid office in the fall. This is called Jayhawk Finances, and it really is a group of financial coaches who can provide coaching to students on managing their personal finances. And finally, we have a yearly summit called the Student Finance Summit, where we get all of those employees who touch anything to do with student finances. They get together and really tabletop ways that they can streamline calendars and deadlines, as well as communications. Next slide. And probably the most successful effort out of that is what we call Plan to Pay. This is where we use our EAB Navigate platform to remind students about upcoming payment deadlines every semester. And then we call everybody a couple days later if they've not paid. So that amounts to about 7,000 personal calls to our first and second year students and about 2,500 text messages to our juniors and seniors. And we have a pretty significantly high rate of payment by the deadline. With this approach, we also then are able to navigate students to financial aid appointments so that they can get a plan to pay if they can't do it by the deadline. I think what's interesting here is that our phone calls are about 19 percentage points more effective than our text messages, which I think just underscores how our students coming out of COVID are really craving those relationships and human interactions. So we'll be seeing if we can ramp up the phone calls moving forward. Next slide, please. We are coming into the third year of our academic advising alignment, which is an embedded centrally reporting model. This is something that really has allowed us to do quite a bit of work with our academic advisors to give them standardized training, but also specific training and disciplines to hold all of our student to advisor ratios to under 300. And I think importantly, to create career ladders that are able to help us reach our advisors who are just incredibly dedicated student-focused professionals. And so what this helps us do is maintain those relationships between students and advisors, which we know is an important part of retention. And so we really credit this move in particular with achieving our highest ever retention rate for our students going to first year to second year. And we actually were seeing 1% increases year on year prior to that. We hope to continue that trend moving forward. And I think what is also interesting is we saw pretty substantial narrowing in gaps in retention between our Pell and non-Pell. So that decreased by 4%. So did our underrepresented minority and white student gap. And then our first gen, non-first gen gap decreased by 2% after this alignment. So this is for our undergraduates. All students have an advisor and all of them meet with the advisor every year. And we've also seen an increased time to re-enrollment for our students, which is a leading indicator of retention and persistence. This model also won an excellence award from our professional organization, NASPA, and we are now moving this platform to include some of our professional online and competency-based education programs in academic year 2025. Next slide. And here are just a lot of numbers that show you how much these services are being used. In combination, our in-person appointments, our student service appointments, as well as EAB Navigate. And so you can see that increase in usage. We also, so we have about 4.25 times every student is interacting with a human via EAB Navigate. or what we call Jayhawk GPS, and then about 2.6 times each student is meeting with a professional advisor. Next slide. And when we survey our students, we're seeing an increased rate of satisfaction with our students. The top 4 metrics are internal survey that show increased satisfaction, some of it, quite increased, but also nationally benchmark survey, the NESE survey, which was conducted last spring, shows a 6% increase compared to 2021. And as I said, we are rating above our peers now for student satisfaction and quality interactions with their advisors. Next slide. The student digital experience is probably one of the messier parts of what we've been doing, and maybe the most important thing that we've done. The amount of noise and information that our students get is extraordinary. And so what we've really tried to do by auditing all of the communications the students get is to think about how we tamp down that noise so that they're really just getting the information that's important to them when they need it so that they actually act on it. So we've refined our digital hub, MyKU. We also, as I said, are trying to refine the student communications through all of the different platforms that we use with students. We just adopted JBot, our AI chatbot, which will go live in the fall. And then we have adopted a new orientation platform for our online students, which again will go online this summer. We have been a user of our EAB Navigate platform for a number of years, but we really have expanded its use to create a success network that includes not only advisors, but instructors, financial aid, career services, support services, and writing center. Regent Benson, this doesn't include our students. We have a separate student affairs pathway for other students and faculty and staff to go through student affairs for concern, but this is purely academic right now, but has really gotten us a way to get all those professional academic professionals to be able to see what a student is doing across all of those different facets of support and align them. Next slide. And this is just a look at our usage of Jayhawk GPS, our EAB Navigate platform. We are seeing an uptick in usage, about a 200% increase in engagement, and we are starting to see some indicators that they're not just using it, but they're taking the information they're getting from it and actually applying it. So we are seeing things like holds are being resolved much faster than they were previously. Next slide. And our 4th recommendation was around intentional pathways, and we have kind of a couple of different pillars we're working on. We, of course, have completed undergrad degree maps, just like all of our colleagues across the Regents institutions. We now are implementing those in a degree planner that's an online platform that lets students make those dynamic so they can actually kind of say, what if I change this major, but I have these courses, what's the pathway I need to take? So that will be implemented in fall of 25. And we are now working on graduate degree maps for those that are appropriate. So mostly our professional degrees and coursework only degrees. We also have taken those maps and integrated them with our KU, our career outcomes to create KU pathways, and I'll tell you about that in a second. And then we have kind of a 2-pronged approach or 3-pronged approach to decreasing DFW rates. We are using DFW rate reports within the EAB Navigate system for these different disciplines for their gateway courses in collaboration with peer and advisor interventions. And then we are doing what we call kind of unit consultations with faculty and with departments to ensure that they understand the learning supports that are afforded to them to help them with their students, as well as teaching transformation and course transformation. Next slide. So those pathways, we call them student pathways. This is a program that brings together academic advising and career services around 6 student pathways that help students explore careers and interests while maintaining credits and forward momentum. And so the first of the semester, we go through our EAB platform and give them the Hopes and Dreams survey. They opt into any and all of the student pathways they're interested in. And then they receive bi-weekly updates on career advising, academic advising, classes they may be interested in, research opportunities, internships, and other networking opportunities around these different pathways. Next slide. This is what some of our progress report stats look like. As I said, we have these reports that are filed, and then we have trained peers who reach out with a personal phone call, and we're seeing a 37% decreased time of kind of having those open cases with these phone calls. What we're working on next is to see if the intervention actually leads to student behavior long-term, or if this is kind of a one-off. Of course, that's what we would like, is that we get people back on a path. Next slide. And then we are combining, of course, that proactive advising and intervention with, as I said, some data collection to understand where our high DFW rate classes are, and then consultations with those units to ensure that they know we have free tutoring, we have supplemental instruction, we have writing support and coaching that we can help them with, and we have a spectacular Center for Teaching Excellence with a number of workshops and opportunities for our faculty to find ways to engage our students more, which we know they're wanting to do. Like many institutions, we've seen a big drop off in attendance, and we really have a kind of a campus collective of faculty who are really wanting to find those ways to connect with students, get them in the classroom, and engage with them. That is the end of my updates. And next slide, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. One question, please, if anybody. Okay, all right. Well, thanks for the update. We appreciate all the progress.
Well, Carl, I might just ask one question, and any of the 3 could answer this. It seems to me that we're getting close to being able to utilize AI in the advising space. Loading our catalog into and degree maps into a engine, and then letting them help write a schedule over 4 years. Is there any experimentation with that going on in the system yet, side by side? Would we be as close to that as I would suspect?
Right now, we are just utilizing the AI chatbot. So that really is going to be more about connecting students to services. Once we get this degree planner online, we'll see where that goes. My experience right now is getting the information from the faculty's brain into any system is still the rate limiting step. And so until we get them to tell us what the curriculum is and what's going to be offered and where it's going to be, the AI can only kind of help. We still have humans who are at the core of that. But agree, I think we're getting closer to using that to personalize a lot of this service.
Thank you.
Regent Rolfe, I'd only add to that. I do think that's one of the benefits of the degree maps work that's been done. That's a starting point to getting that put in place so that we can put it in systems. And then there are, some systems that are rapidly taking advantage of AI that can help us generate that. But that is the next hope after you've got a degree map laid down.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you all. So when Misty's back on, if you want to ask the question you had of her.
Okay. Misty, quick question. To what extent did all the problems with FAFSA factor into reduced applications and reduced interest in college?
Great question, Regent Winter. Thanks for that. It's really hard to gauge, the impact that we saw with the simplified FAFSA rollout. And it's easy to, focus on that burden, for our students, those students who really were able to see that progression, through the potential barriers that financial aid application maybe created. Still, we're able to access college and hopefully other funding streams, we're able to support that. I know our institutions were very diligent in helping and assisting those students through those potential issues. I do want to elevate that, this year we have really seen our U.S. Department of Ed, the financial aid department specifically, ramp up their services for our students. We have, some kind of an odd landscape that we're handling, currently, that could impede upon, the financial aid completion numbers, for this year as well. But the work still remains the work. And we're going to continue to support those students. But I really appreciate how much the U.S. Department of Ed has provided assistance and really helped those students who are maybe caught into the application and they weren't able to progress. And they've really retroactively supported those students. They call them cold cases and help support those students moving forward to progress to higher ed.
And it looked like, to what extent, last question, to what extent, if any, did the FAFSA problem result in fewer applications and fewer and less, quote, success for what you're doing? Any way to tell that?
It's really hard to scale, really. Where I think it's right now, as far as our financial aid completion numbers, I'm very pleased. We actually have around 25% of our class of 2025 students that have completed the financial aid application thus far. And that's higher than when you compare year to year change in FAFSA submissions, that's higher. So that's certainly exciting to see. And then also on that note, I want to mention the financial aid application next year is planned to roll out October 1st. And I just really think, getting back to that normalcy will really help in our financial aid completion numbers. In addition, was looking at this data actually yesterday, and with our FAFSA application completion numbers thus far, when we look at the low income high school students, the year to year change, we actually are seeing a 7.7% increase as of the numbers pulled on January 31st. And then also when you look at, underserved populations, the high minority high school students, we're seeing a 14.4% increase. So those numbers certainly, the trajectory is positive, and we hope to keep up that momentum. But again, we're really taking a little more of a targeted approach, and we're waiting on some grant money that's kind of held up in the system right now to really support those financial aid efforts and completion opportunities for students to really, again, target those underserved populations that need our support during this time.
Good. What you're doing and how you're doing it's very, very important. And thank you for all your effort. Thanks, Chair.
And thank you. So process check. We're a little behind schedule, so let's push through the two outstanding topics we have on the agenda, and then we'll build a break into the transition to executive session. So if that works for everyone, I'm getting a couple thumbs up, so that's our plan. So that takes us to Vice President Frisbee. This is another example of an update that evaluates the impact of some of the funding we get with the comprehensive grant.
Thank you, Chair Ice. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me see if I can
share my screen and get this rolling. Am I on okay?
You're on okay.
All right, very good. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Comprehensive Grant Program. First, want to herald your advocacy for student financial aid administered by our agency. Since 2018, our funding has grown from just over 21 million. Now we are granting out over $72 million worth of funding to students. And the largest single program we have is the Comprehensive Grant Program. I'm going to talk this year, for right now, about fiscal year 2024, the year that has that ended last June 30. Just to give you some context here. So the comprehensive grant, you'll recall from past discussions, is a decentralized program.
Elaine, you are showing us your notes version of your slides.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine with me, but I just want to make sure.
Well, we may just have to do that because I don't know how to change it.
Okay, so just so you know, we can read ahead.
All right. Well, there's not much in my notes that you're just going to be able to read ahead, I'm afraid. So
Okay.
the sector distributions that we talk about a lot during in meetings and with legislators, the private independent schools received in fiscal year 2024 nearly 37% of the funding, which was $35.3 million in fiscal year 2024. And the publics, of course, had the balance. And we administer the funding according to three sectors: the private independents, the Washburn University, and the state universities. For enrollments, though, although the privates had 37% of the funding, they had 18% of the student enrollment, according to what was provided to us for fall of 2023 for undergrad resident students. Now, we talked a little bit there at the beginning about the growth in funding for the programs, and this program, the Comp Grant, has grown by far. So since 2016, the state funding for the Comp Grant has grown nearly 5 times in its scale, when you include the private match that is required from the institutions that participate in the program. So tremendous increase. And of course, that has quite an impact on the student number. So the number of students served by the Comp Grant has now grown by 3.5 times. So again, we are serving now nearly 29,000 students last year just for the Comp Grant alone. How did the figures play out then for applicants? The privates awarded 71% of their applicants. Washburn was able to award 74%. While the state universities awarded only 65%. Overall, it averaged out to be about 67%. But you'll see on the right, the amounts that were on average that were awarded to students were still well below the maximum award that's allowed. Now, that's set in statute. And for fiscal year 2024, that maximum was $10,000 for the private schools and $4,000 for the publics. So while the public universities had 72% of the total applicants, they awarded only 60% of the grants because of how the funding was awarded by the sectors. And then I just want to point out, last slide here, the privates awarded students with much higher income levels, and that we've seen this before, as measured by the expected family contributions. The public universities continue to award KCG grants to students with very low EFC, ranging from $1,100 at the medical center up to just over $3,000 at Pittsburgh State. So some real variances there. Of course, the cost of attendance at the private schools is much higher, but that's quite a gap there. So I wanted to just cover those highlights. Those were my slides. Let me stop sharing, so I don't do that very well. And see if there are questions. You also, of course, have a lot of this material in the issue paper starting on page 39.
So any questions? I mean, I would just comment to say there's things in there to be very happy about and very proud of. And you can also see the impacts of the awards not following the students as we had recommended. I won't belabor that, just highlight it. So any other questions or comments? Okay, all right, thank you. I believe that takes us to our legislative update, and Fred.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon,
Thank you.
everyone. Good to see everybody. Hope you're all warm. Let's see. So we are already in the middle of week 5 of the legislative session. We're quickly approaching turnaround, which, as I've shared with you before, that's the date when most bills have to be out of their chamber of origin. So if it's a House bill, it has to be out of the House. If it's a Senate bill, it has to be out of the Senate. There's lots of ways around that, but for the vast majority of the bills, that's how the process works. This coming Monday is the final day for non-exempt committees to meet, and then next Thursday is turnaround. So session's moving quickly. Most committees are not meeting today. There are some Senate committees that are meeting virtually because of the weather, just trying to stay on schedule. There's, as you know, the session's about a week. Most of the deadlines are a week shorter than usual, and because of that, there's still a lot of bills to be heard and be worked. And so they're trying to get that done in the next couple of days because, as I said before, they have to have it done by Monday if they want to have that done. While the committees have been fairly busy, we haven't seen a lot of bills debated on the floor of either chamber yet. But with next week being turnaround, they're going to spend 2 or 3 full days on the floor debating bills. So that's when we'll see what their priorities are. As I've shared with you before, and Dr. Flanders touched upon earlier in the meeting, the House Appropriations Committee is working on the legislature's budget. They plan to complete their work before the end of the day tomorrow. So they're going to stay here until they get done. They want the budget to be debated by the full House next week. They need the weekend for revisers to get that all packaged up and presented to the full body to vote on. Once it passes the House, it'll go over to the Senate. We don't know for sure what that process looks like yet, but I'm confident that there'll be some opportunities for us to continue to work on your priorities. But I expect that process will be fairly quick in the Senate. They're going to want to have their budget finalized as quickly as possible to give them enough time so both chambers can come up with an agreement on a final budget bill. They, with no sine die, no long break in April, if they're going to want to have the chance to override any governor's line item vetoes, they're going to need to do that quickly. So I think they're going to get the budget done as soon as they can so they retain that opportunity to override vetoes. On the budget, we're continuing to advocate for your unified request, paying particular attention to the pay plan increases, funding for the Campus Restoration Act, which what Dr. Flanders mentioned earlier has been stripped out for this year, at least at this point in the process, and then support for the blueprint for literacy, which also has been taken out, but we're having conversations on how to get that back in and what that may look like. Your legislative proposal regarding service scholarship interest rates and repayment terms, along with, we put in some language that deals with the adult learner grant that was also one of your priorities. That's moving forward. We had the hearing. Senate Education has said every day this week they plan to work it, and their hearings are just going along, so they've not worked any bills yet. I'm pretty confident they'll get to that hopefully tomorrow, if not by Friday. There's a number of other bills that keep popping up that either directly or indirectly impact higher education. We're keeping an eye on those. Your team does great work at coming up with testimony and getting those submitted. As you guys have been meeting, testimony's been flying in and out, and they're working nonstop trying to keep up with these bills that are getting scheduled. One of those bills to highlight would be House Bill 2348, which a couple of people have touched on today. That's the one that was introduced late last week and heard yesterday. It's the one that would purport to remove any property right associated with tenure at the post-secondary level. I'm sure you heard yesterday at the hearing, if you followed it or read any media reports, there were a number of opponents. The testimony from Dr. Flanders on your behalf focused on the bill, or on the impact the bill would have on the ability to recruit and retain high quality staff. Beyond that, we're going to keep our eyes open. We'll see what else pops up in the next couple of days. After turnaround, there's still the ability for bills to go to exempt committees and then referred back out. So just because we're meeting that deadline doesn't mean new stuff won't come, but most of that will slow down and we'll be able to focus on the stuff that we've already been working on. And as those things pop up, we'll weigh in where necessary and think you guys want to have a voice. So any questions about any of this or anything else that might be coming up?
Anybody? Okay, looks like everybody's pleased with your update.
Very good. Reach out whenever.
All right, then we will do that for sure, and you do the same, please.
Okay, I'll do it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so process-wise, we have, if there is a motion for an executive session, we have a separate link for that. So we would move to that, but by the rules, we come back to this one, our meeting to do any adjournment. So we'll entertain a motion in a second, as I've suggested a moment ago. We'll be able to break into that start time, but a fairly short one. And then again, if that motion comes, and then we'll come back here to adjourn unless there's other business that comes up. So having said all that, is there a motion for an executive session?
Mr. Chair, if it would please the committee, I have a motion for executive session. This is Regent Rolfe. I move that the Kansas Board of Regents recess into executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel. The subject of this executive session is a university CEO personnel matter, and the purpose is to protect the privacy of the individual board employee involved. The session should last approximately 30 minutes. The open meeting of the Board of Regents shall resume at, and I'm going to build in an 8-minute break. We'll resume in executive session at 4:15, which means the executive session will last until 4:45 p.m. And it will include the Board of Regents, President CEO Blake Flanders, and President Dan Shipp for a time. Do I have a second?
I will make that second.
Thank you. All in favor, indicate by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right. So again, we'll move to the other link that hopefully you have, and we'll see you all starting at 4:15.
Steve, we can see your screen.
Okay. Am I the slowest one? Okay, so I think we've got the majority of the regions, if not all. So we're returning from executive session. Anything else for the good of the order?
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we adjourn.
Thank you for that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. We've landed.